Hi there, welcome. I'm Bob Thompson, and I'd like to welcome you to a crazy program called The World of College Cost Challenges. Now, how far out can you get about that? We have a book that's coming out, and the program that we started about 6 months ago is really to share different chapters in this galley-proof book, soon to be published, I hope. So the World of College Cost Challenges is really parents sharing with parents. About 80%, I'm guessing, 75, 80, 85% of the content in the World of College Cost Challenges is actual experiences and parents willing to share those experiences, good, bad, some of them not so good, but how their experiences can help younger parents. So this book really is primarily for early stage parents, but it goes all the way through to help even Susan graduated from college this last month. So even the parents that have the experience partially behind them, now we're looking at student and parent loans. So from cradle to retirement, and in many cases, retirement. So we talk about changing the dynamics, changing from a two-dimensional system that we've had for 30, 40, 50 years. Save early, save a lot. Taking the two dimensions to 7 stages, we call them. Identifying and grouping all parents that are facing these challenges into 3 different groups. And we talk about those 3 parent groups and what we can learn from each of them. And all parents are in one of those 3 categories, okay? So when we look at the World of College Cost Challenges, I look at the previous programs about unlevel playing field, 2 dimensions to 7 stages I mentioned, monopoly parents. These are titles of programs, and we try to relate that theme or title to the subject of some chapters in the book. 3 plans I mentioned, from nightmares to dreams. Now, if I could go back and redo that or edit that particular program's title, I'd probably reverse it. Instead of from nightmares to dreams, maybe we should have had from dreams to nightmares. And that particular program focused primarily on that wonderful subject of FAFSA. And if we can share the experiences that parents have in that junior, senior year of high school and going through the experience of completing FAFSA, maybe from dreams to nightmares would have been a better title in hindsight. But another program, in fact, the last program that we had was titled Discerning Parents. Discerning Parents. And how these 3 groups of parents, how are we so bold to recognize and illustrate and share with you discerning parents, and I guess we'd have to say those that aren't discerning. That's kind of an iffy area, and we try to be tactful in doing that. But the World of College Cost Challenges is one, like I say, of sharing. And we believe, let's come back to FAFSA for a second, that one of the chapters on monitoring is that little Joe Jr., 6 months old, we're going to send little Joe and his sister, Karen, we're going to send them to college. Now, Sister Karen is 2.5 years old, and little Joe is 6 or 7 months. We're going to send them to college. We're going to send Karen to college first this month. We're going to send her and do a FAFSA to arrive at an expected family contribution today, with current household income, with the current cost of college, with the current savings, if there is any, okay? But if we do this for 17, 18, 19, 20 years, okay, then we find that this group of parents over here that are what we say are successful with their experience, even though they're a small minority of the grouping, that their experience in doing that is that they relied less on the golden god of financial aid. Now, we have $1.5 trillion of student loan debt. That debt has doubled in the last 7 years. 1.5 trillion. So we've gone from the original idea of college cost challenges, and the more we looked at it and looked at the experiences that we've had with hundreds and hundreds of families and literally thousands of children, we look at college cost challenges in a bigger sense, a bigger picture, to say the world of college cost challenges, because we all face those challenges. And Joey and Karen's parents have XYZ income, perhaps going from 2 incomes to 1 income, and maybe back to 1.5 or what have you. But these are different challenges that we have. We don't have any money to save for college. But if I know, based on another chapter that's critical, that first stage is a written plan, that the written plan takes into consideration and assumes that we are going to be similar to Josh and Sarah that preceded our experience, and they're teaching us more than save early and save a lot. I'm critical and I'm outspoken, and I admit that, and I apologize if I hurt people's feelings, but I think my industry, the financial planning industry, and related industries have done a very poor job. We're seeing more companies, we're seeing more effort by planners, and I really suggest the reason for that is we're becoming more and more aware of this doubling of student debt, student loan debt, and we can really relate a lot of this to 2015, 2016, and we have these efforts by entrepreneurial people in saying, well, I've got a better solution, and so on. That goes from software to seminars to how to save on FAFSA and so on and so on. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. But I wanted to share with you some current, and we'd like to talk about the current situation, and with an election coming up next year, and we have both parties and candidates talking about this student debt. And I would guess that every candidate out there on both sides of the aisle on different positions, different things, are talking about student loan debt. And we talked in a previous program about how corporations, employers are stepping up. And we talked about the first one, and now we have 8 or 9 corporations that are publicly recognized as incorporating in the benefit schedule different forms of addressing student loan debt. So progress is being made there. Mark Kantrowitz has a program that I think has evolved into a meaningful tool for financial planners and for planning professionals. And Kantrowitz has savingforcollege.com and has association membership and that type of thing where they are sharing within this universe of planners ideas and how to better attack some of these challenges. We may not have time, and I'm biting off a lot here, but I'd like to go through 5 or 6 things that since our last program taping hit my eye, and I said, whoa, maybe that's subject matter that we can share in the World of College Cost Challenges program. This particular article in the Wall Street Journal earlier this month, 3 ways grandparents can pay for college. So like the employers, we've had meaningful grandparents talk about this. In fact, my first program on college cost, I shared an experience that I had before moving to Connecticut, but in Toledo, Ohio, a gentleman that was concerned about 3 granddaughters, his 2 daughters, teacher and a development person in a nonprofit, not making a lot of money, but Ted was concerned about his 3 granddaughters and setting up. Now this goes back a lot of years ago. So my point there is we've talked to grandparents over the years, and they can make a meaningful contribution. But this particular article talks about contributing perhaps to a 529, and then getting into the good, the bad, and the ugly, who owns it, and so on and so on. So grandparents can take advantage of some tools that are out there, and if we look at some of the strategies of not only who owns it, but when to use it and so on, and is it in the FAFSA formula or not. So a lot of muddy water there, but I did want to share the fact that grandparents can contribute in a lot of meaningful ways, even if it's a case of paying for books. We have 2 sets of grandparents, and they alternate semesters where one set of grandparents are paying for books this semester, the other grandparents are paying. Meaningful to students and certainly that middle generation of parents. The next article is matter of degree, and this article is about a book, The College Dropout Scandal. And the gentleman, the author, is David Kerp. And it's 175 pages and $25, but it's The College Dropout Scandal. Who contributes? Why are we where we are? And we can put blame out there all over the place, and that seems to be a modern thing. We have to blame somebody, right? But there are too many to mention that have contributed to this $1.5 trillion. If we went back to, let's talk about the dropout scandal. We have about 34% of student debt people who started school, incurred some student loans, but did not complete college, sometimes after 1 semester, 2 semesters, a year and a half or whatever. But back in 2010, we'd have to go back before that. We'd have to go back to 1991, I believe it was, where the national program was put into play really to compete with private lenders. That if I had college debt, this program of student loans, subsidized loans, and so on. Well, if we move forward from 1991 to 2010, we kind of nationalized that, and 2 years later, act of part of Obamacare was how do we have a national program that generates revenue for the government. So conceptually, we can charge 6.5–7% for these loans, even though a 30-year bond is only 2.8 or 3%. Now, the more that we have federal subsidized loans, the more it encourages, and I believe this, and it has encouraged colleges and universities not to put restraints on the increases in college cost. That's a pretty known factor, a contributing factor. Many of the schools, the universities and colleges deny that, but the facts are, the truth is that when we have hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in increased student loans. Now, this particular book, I think, shares that the dropout is we have a public system that is flowing through college, soon-to-be college students that are admitted, and they're not as prepared in pre-college sense as they should be. Now, I'm not taking sides on either part of that because I don't get into the blame game, but when we look at contributing factors, multiple contributing factors, it is what it is. Now we look at the 2012 Act that retroactively, 2010 said for new borrowers, 2010, new borrowers. 2012, part of the Obamacare, and a part to pay where we can save taxpayers $58 billion over a 10-year period by incorporating this. The problem is the actuaries and the Congressional Budget Office, their projections out there were, in my mind, not realistic. But because we took into fact that deferment, the social public income based, that I can take and spread my student loan over here, and at the end of 10 years or 20 years, if I paid, my loan is forgiven. Well, that figure is a shortfall this year. New figures are out by the Congressional Budget Office that figure has gone to a minus $300 billion. Now, all that means is if I have student loans and I went to, I hate to pick on Boston College, and I incur $60,000, part of that being loans, and I want to be an elementary school teacher. Well, the problem is I need to have a master's really to get paid in that context. But schools need to consult and shepherd these students coming into school that your degree that you're seeking is going to make it impossible for you really to repay your loans. And we're talking about student loans, not parent loans, which exacerbates and makes the problem even bigger. But the point is, if I have deferment, okay, and I pay just the minimum, but it's a fixed minimum student loan payment, okay, 1% of the student loans out there under that plan, they're only paying 1% of the balance. Now, if the interest is 6 or 7, that's going to, the government is not going to receive repayment on these loans for 100 years. Do the math there, okay? But the point of this gentleman's book is that if if I'm making my fixed payments, it doesn't hurt my credit score. And because that doesn't hurt my credit score on the amount of student loans balance, I can go out and get other loans, automobile, mortgage, and so on. Now, if things are tight, and we talk about the R word today, recession, when is it coming, so on and so on. If things hit the floor here, what's the first thing to be defaulted on? Delinquency on student loans. They can repossess my car, they can take away my home, but I'm going to pay those things first, but I'm going to default on my student loans first. Interesting book. I haven't read the book. I've read the synopsis, if you will, of that. Government scan. Here we go along the same thing. Student loans, okay? And it's basically, and this is a Wall Street Journal article, just a couple weeks ago, okay? Very similar theme that this gentleman in his book talks about, but the accounting and the actuarial assumptions being what they were, I think right now we're paying the unintended consequence of that. The other thing I was talking about was income-based, and I couldn't think of the name of that. Here's another article, and this, I guess this is the Wall Street Journal also. Consultant defends a college aid tactic, okay? Now here's a young woman in Chicago, and she came up, starting in 2011, she started a company to help parents, well-intended, okay, to help parents. And she found that, let me preface this. We have a number of clients whose children go to school out of state, and parents will ask about the student, either undergrad or grad school, becoming independent. And if they, in that resident state, they are independent, then they get in-state charges rather than out-of-state. And there are a number of people legitimately do that. Well, this consultant here in Chicago went one step further and said, if your child is 14, 15, 16, we can change guardianship, go to probate court, have the judge change guardian. And the reason for that is when I get around to that lovely experience of FAFSA, my guardian or my FAFSA report doesn't take into consideration my blood parents, my real parents, and their income, their net worth, their this, their, it doesn't take that into consideration. So out of 1,000 probate cases that were researched, 38 out of that group had guardianship changes with the probate court. Now this young lady, entrepreneurially, comes up with a good idea. She charges, by the way, $5,000 to go through this process. So I take that $5,000 fee and maybe, depending on the area, a legal fee of $1,000, $1,500, $2,000. Maybe it cost me $7,000 or $8,000 or more, maybe double in some cases. But everybody's looking at this problem and attacking it differently. Now, my last thing is, I call it XYZ alphabet college planning case. I didn't want to use the actual name of the firm, but it is another one of these membership association planner. Here's a package for a planner, and you use this package and it'll increase your business by 2, 3, 5-fold, 10-fold in some cases. So they have this software that's available to people that sign up as membership, and they do some good things. I'll admit that. In preparing with particular schools, and if you've seen a couple of my programs before, one of the evils, one of the challenges is the good, the bad, and a lot of ugly with respect to college calculators and how much I need to save for a college. But I get to the bottom here and we talk about what the cost of college is, the cost of attending, okay? We take from the cost of attending what my protection of assets of the parents, and I arrive at an EFC, expected family contribution figure. And I start with this cost of attendance and the expected contribution, and the difference is the need that's there, and all of this comes around the form of financial aid, student loans and paybacks, and the days of a lot of grants are past us. But I look at things like this and say, okay, here's the good. And then I get to the bottom after I look at this. And if the family exceeds the asset protection allowance and so on, I find that a properly structured cash value life insurance policy can substantially increase my financial aid eligibility. Here I go to all this effort and expense to increase my financial aid eligibility, which 70-80% of that is increased loans. So how have I helped the parent in that case? I appreciate the effort, and sincerely the effort to help parents, and in any way that we can help young parents. But the idea of things like changing guardianship at age 14 or 15 or 16 or whatever, and having the panacea of, gee, we can increase your financial aid eligibility with the cash value of permanent life insurance. I get a little upset, and again, I say I'm outspoken in that respect, but we need to address the problem. We need to have lessons from parents who have already experienced this, sharing with younger parents on the reality that they're facing, okay? If we think that tuition for colleges in the future is going to be free, I'd suggest that we not be caught up in all of that. If it is, wonderful. I don't think that's going to happen. So we have to prepare. We have to prepare in a meaningful way and take advantage of the experiences, as I mentioned, of other parents. So good luck to you. If you're grandparents, you can help a great deal. Parents, have patience and have a sense of reality. Be a discerning parent that is really going to look other than do it yourself and the calculator of save early and save a lot. It doesn't work for most people. See you next time.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.